Alright, so if you're watching this video, chances are very high that you have an interest or have incorporated some aspects of what we might call natural health or spirituality into your regular everyday lifestyle. And if so, what we're going to talk about in this video is extremely important and relevant to you. Because maybe you've noticed this, maybe you're already aware of this, of how a lot of people in these industries end up turning these quote-unquote alternatives into the very thing that they're supposedly supposed to be alternatives to. So for example, we might look at pharmaceutical medicine. In mainstream medicine, people say, oh, well, the alternative to that is, alternative health or like natural health or herbalism. Instead of using drugs, we'll use plants. Instead of using mainstream whatever, we're going to take care of ourselves, be more natural. Or let's say people get out of religion and say, well, I don't really like religions. They seem, constraining, they seem whatever, so I'm going to get more into spirituality. Or in natural health, people will say, oh, I don't really like this mainstream American diet, so I'm going to try an alternative diet and be a vegetarian, a vegan, a raw foodist, paleo. I'm going to do any of these different alternatives to whatever we might consider the mainstream. So this would start off and most people would say, well, you know what? This thing over here is bad, but these alternatives are better, and these alternatives are good. But what happens is oftentimes people end up turning the alternative into the very thing that is supposed to be an alternative to. So let's take a look at an example. And let's start off with a statement. Chemical A does Y, so more of it is going to be better. Now I would ask you, which thing do you think this statement applies to? Do you think it applies to pharmaceutical drugs and mainstream medical whatever? Or do you think it applies to natural health and herbalism and whatever? And the answer to that question is it's both, actually. Even though it probably shouldn't be. Because really the foundation of pharmaceutical medicine, which started way back with, we could say, like vitamin C with scurvy or iodine with goiters, is basically like this one chemical does this one thing in the body. So if we get more of this chemical in a purified form, then it's going to be better and we'll be able to do things. That's the basic underlying idea. This one chemical does this one thing, so more of it is better. Yet, if you're not already aware of this, I own multiple herbal supplement companies. And many of the questions that I've received over the years, people say, okay, reishi extract, for example. Okay, your reishi extract is a 10-to-1 full spectrum extract that has 12 to 14% polysaccharides. But I was on this other website and it has 30 or 40% polysaccharides, so it's better, right? Well, what is the pharmaceutical mindset? Well, chemical A does this, so more is better. Polysaccharides are good for your immune system, so that's what they do, so that's good, so more of it is better. But wait, I thought we were doing herbalism as an alternative to pharmaceutical drugs. But we're still using the pharmaceutical mindset, but we're doing an alternative thing. Does that work? Is that like putting a square peg in a round hole? Now obviously there is some value in that, which we're going to get into in the video. I'm just using this example to basically illustrate a point and illustrate kind of a context that we're looking at. So, we can look at that and just really see because, let's say reishi, for example, if it has 400 active chemicals, then how smart is it to say, well, just one or two of those chemicals is really good and really all we need to focus on. All of the other hundreds of active chemicals that make up its plant intelligence and have allowed people to use it safely for 5,000 years, we don't need those. We don't need to worry about those. We just need these two and that's it. Does that sound familiar at all? Does that mindset or that approach sound familiar at all? And if we follow that mindset and approach, where might we end? Where might we end back again? So what we're saying is not anything is good or bad, right or wrong. We're not putting anything down. What we're doing is asking a different question. We might say, okay, well, what is the real quote unquote culprit. Because the whole reason why we wanted to do something different is because we thought something was bad. You know, we didn't like this religion, so we tried spirituality. We didn't like this diet, so we tried that diet. We didn't like this healthcare, so we tried that healthcare. Because we thought, well, it's not really this, and it's bad, and X, Y, or Z. So really, what's the real culprit that we are talking about here? Whether it is religion or spirituality or diet or herbalism or fasting or cleansing or whatever, it doesn't matter. Same underlying cause. Well, perhaps the real issue is not the modality or the thing or the person or the institution, but perhaps the approach, the awareness which created that thing, the foundation which gave rise to the thing, which would be a really left brain mechanical compartmentalized awareness where we emphasize the ego is the best and the shadow is bad. We gotta just kick that away. We gotta get rid of that. We gotta never look at that. Or the mental aspect, that's good. Or the feeling aspect, not bad. We don't have any room for that. We can't deal with that. And that's really the foundational approach, because what happens is, for example, let's say we're interested in spirituality or natural health. And we say, you know what, religion's bad, so I'm going to go do spirituality. But what happens is we didn't address the original approach. We didn't address the real root of the problem. We didn't address the real awareness or the real approach that created the thing in the first place. So it's real often that we end up back in the same place that we were in the beginning, which if that doesn't sound true or accurate to you, just look at history and look at how many religions or spiritual traditions have ended up in pretty dark places as a result of the way people behaved or the way people treated them. Also, look at how many quote-unquote alternative spiritual things are run and orchestrated and feel pretty much exactly like hardcore dogmatic hierarchical institutions. Because that was the reason we wanted to get out of the thing, but the thing that we're going to, the alternative, often ends up being the same thing. And it's not saying that's good or bad, right or wrong, or not any of those things, because ultimately it's not about that. That's the wrong question, that's the wrong approach, and it's still the wrong approach generating more of the wrong approach. Because ultimately things in life go together, and the shadow follows us wherever we go. Meaning, if we're in here, let's say we're doing this thing over here and we have a shadow, and then we move over here, what happened? Our shadow just followed us. We didn't get away from it. So if we don't want to look at it here, and we don't want to look at it here, we don't want to look at it here, we don't want to look at it here, it's still there, it's still following us, it's still influencing us, it's still draining our energy, it's still shaping our patterns. So wherever we go, whatever we do, it's still there. So might it be useful to say, oh, I see it now. There it is. It's there. I realize now this is a natural part of being a human being, because light and shadow go together. You can't really have one without the other. Night and day go together. You can't really have one without the other. And that's not a moralistic judgment. That's not a belief system. That's just, if we just look at the world and just observe, we can see that. It's not something you have to believe me or take my word for it. Look in your own life, look in the world and see, is it true? Does it make sense? So for that reason, would it make sense to be like, okay, which one do you want? Do you want day or do you want night? Do you want shadow or do you want darkness? It's not really how it works. So really, we've talked about issues, we've talked about problems, we've talked about an incorrect approach. And many people will say, oh, you're putting down religion, you're putting down spirituality, you're putting down herbalism, you're putting down all these things. And I'm not at all, because I'm a huge fan of herbalism. I'm obviously a huge fan of spirituality and natural health and all of these things, because I've made 500 plus videos on it and created multiple businesses and dedicated a huge chunk of my life to it. So I'm in no way, shape, or form putting anything down. I'm actually trying to uplift and help things to be a little bit more clear. It's quite the opposite. So really, what is the solution then? You know, because yes, we might be interested in these things, but unless we actually deal with the shadow aspect, or deal with the complementary aspect, or deal with the implicit rather than the explicit, or deal with the root cause of things or deal with the approach or the awareness that created the problem in the first place, then we're just going to keep precipitating it, keep creating it, and keep bringing more of it into the world. But if we can see it, we can own it, we can sort of take back our power, then it kind of doesn't matter as much what we do, whether it's this or that or whatever, because we're coming from a place of wholeness, a place of unity. And we've reached a place of maybe balancing both things and really being happy with choosing options that are more transcendental. And what I mean by that is we might have, like light, we might have dark over here. We might have what we think we should do and what we really want to do. And these two things are battling back and forth. And what happens? We're stressed. What should I do? What should I not do? I want to do this, but I have to do that. So what we mean by transcendental is, okay, find an option that is superior to both down here, that makes them both happy in a way that's greater than what they both could have imagined. So it went above and beyond, or it transcended what we were originally looking at. So it's creating a more of a transcendental option. Because really, most of our life is wrestling with these paradoxes. What we want to do, what we have to do, what we feel we should do, what we think we should do, what we want, what we must do. And all of these different things, we're always trying to wrestle with them. And really, that's just a black hole. We're going to be stuck there forever. But if we can get to a place of really understanding, well, maybe it's kind of the approach. Maybe it's because I'm really just trying to overemphasize one aspect at the expense of another and really compartmentalize and look at everything in these weird little mechanical ways and separate everything off and use these really abstract, really far removed from reality kinds of mindsets and approaches. And our ability to think holistically or perceive holistically or perceive things symbolically or archetypically or psychologically is perhaps impaired because of that. Because if we look at it, well, what do all these things have in common? People hate pharmaceutical medicine and mainstream medicine because it doesn't take into account humanity. It doesn't take into account often the vast diversity of experience. It tries to just say, well, this one thing is this way all the time across all boards and all situations, and it doesn't matter. But that's not how reality works most of the time. And we can say the same thing for any of the other examples that we were looking at. So hopefully that's made sense, and I guess I just want to reinstate for the 10th time. I'm not putting anything down. I'm not saying anything bad because I love herbs. I love herbalism. I love reishi mushroom. I love high quality products. Take them all the time myself. I like spirituality and natural health and diet and all these other things that we're talking about. 2 thumbs up. And really, to get to the next level, it's going to require a shift in approach. If we don't just want to keep recreating the same thing, or just to keep going around in circles, stuck on the same sort of loops all the time. So hopefully this video has been helpful and added some clarity and some insight to the conversation. And thanks for watching this video, and I'll talk to you soon.